the way Miracle started for me, I was sent a screenplay, a wonderful screenplay by a guy named Michael Petroni called Miracles. And at that point it was, well, it had always been owned by Spyglass and had been developed through Spyglass Entertainment. And I had not worked with Spyglass before, but when I received this feature script, my assumption was that this was a rewrite, that they wanted me to take this and somehow rewrite it and it would be made as a feature. So I read the script and it was one of those cases where I thought, well, I don't really know what they want me to do here because this is pretty wonderful as it is. And it was only later then through a conversation with my agent that he said, oh, no, no, no. This is going to be used as the basis. What they would like to do is create a 1-hour TV series, sort of a spiritual X-Files. And then I thought, well, that's interesting, but I'm still confused. I don't know what that is. So, but I better take the meeting, find out what's going on. So I went to the meeting, and I brought with me to the meeting, and it was something I started doing right around that time. I would just bring something with me, sort of as a little good luck charm. And so what I brought was this book called The Physical Phenomena of Mysticism by Herbert Thurston, which I happen to have on my shelf. And what this is, kind of is what the show became, and that was not anything I knew. It's just sort of how it evolved. Herbert Thurston was an Anglican, I believe he was a minister, and during the 20s and 30s he investigated psychic phenomenon, and it was when spiritualism was still pretty popular in America, spiritualism being seances and contacting the dead through spirit mediums. And what he was trying to do was look at all psychic phenomenon in the context of what is actually a sign from God, what is actually a miracle, and what is something else. And that is what he did. And then when I went into this meeting with Megan Walpert and Suzanne Patmore, I started talking a little bit about that, and it led literally what I expected to be a 20-minute meeting turned into a 3-hour meeting where ideas were flowing back and forth, and the show was born in that room on that day. This was March of 2001. And we got very excited about the idea that a character could come from a very strict theological background, and a character who was sort of raised to believe that if anything strange ever happens on earth, it is either a sign from God or a sign from the devil. And then suddenly be thrust into a world where strange things are happening that sort of cross those boundaries, and where you can't draw distinctions between good and bad because the phenomenon he's encountering has elements of both. And so what does that do to his belief system? And of course, it is destabilizing. And that's what makes the drama, and that's what makes it interesting and fun and scary, of course. So we talked about how we wanted to portray this, and we started talking about ideas like there would be sort of a haunting, for instance, or a poltergeist case in which furniture would get moved around in a room. But if it was viewed from the ceiling and like a photograph was taken, you would see that the furniture had been actually formed into letters from an ancient language that would contain a partial message. So we were trying to like mix and match this whole grab bag. There was also a case that I talked about in which a UFO researcher in New York actually had a sort of a support group of people who believed they had been abducted. And when he was talking to these people, he would hypnotically regress them, and he would tape record these sessions. And at a certain point, they would begin speaking in tongues. At least that's what he thought they were doing. And he thought, well, is there a religious connection here? And ultimately what he found out is that they were speaking kind of a weird version of ancient Gaelic, which none of these people knew. But it connected up to Gaelic folklore about small green guys with wands living in the forest, except the small green guys with wands these people had dealt with were coming from the sky. So we were suddenly finding that all the folklore and the religion and the stuff you would see on documentaries about the paranormal, all these things could sort of find a nexus in this show, and it would open up the world and we could do all kinds of stories. So that was very exciting to us. The second thing, and possibly the most important thing that came out of that meeting, was this can't be a show about the Catholic Church. This was being developed for ABC, and ABC was simply not interested in taking that on. They had done a show a few seasons earlier called Nothing Sacred, which was a very sort of on the face of it controversial show about the church. And real early on we thought, we're doing a show about the paranormal, and we like the fact that this character comes from a religious background, but it can't be about a Vatican conspiracy. Nobody wanted that, and ultimately that's territory that has been trod elsewhere, and we thought, well, let's do something else. So we wanted to start out there and end up over here. And that transition from religion to general paranormal was a huge challenge all the way through, because the questions kept coming back. Is this guy a priest? How do we explain he's not a priest? How do we explain that his points of view are not the points of view of the Catholic Church? So all those things had to be negotiated very carefully. And our other challenge with that is that the Catholic Church was very much in the news at the time that this was being developed, because there were many, many sex abuse scandals that were being covered literally every day in major newspapers across the country. At the exact same time, we were gearing up to sell a show whose pilot has priests and a Monsignor. And so again, is there danger here? Ultimately, we did not have any of that. I mean, the joke we, unfortunately tell is that we weren't on the air long enough to generate controversy. We would have loved controversy, but we flew so low under the radar that I don't think anyone had a chance to be offended or even construe a way to take offense. So, so those were all of the things that were being dealt with as the show was being developed. Now, when it came to casting, we had many, many ideas. Skeet Ulrich was one of the first ideas we had for Paul Callan, but at the time, we didn't think he was available. All the stories we had heard were that he had sort of stepped back from show business for a while. He was doing fine. He had plenty of dough in the bank. He was going to live in Virginia with his wife and his kids and, enjoy the good life for a while. So early on, we thought, okay, well, he's unattainable. So where else do we go? And we auditioned a lot of people. And it was during that process, and it was funny because, we had a lot of amazing people come in. We had Matthew Fox, who's now on Lost. Jason Priestley came in, which would have been an excellent casting pun. We had some really amazing people. Somewhere in this process, someone found out, oh, wait a second. Skeet got a hold of the script. His agents or managers had sent him a script, and he read it, and he actually really responded to it, and he's interested. So at that point, we thought, well, okay, let's give that a shot. And he flew out from Virginia, and we met with him, and pretty much instantly we thought, okay, this is great. We've got something here. And I remember talking to Matt, who had worked on, Matt Reeves, who directed the pilot, and he had worked on Felicity for 4 years at that point. So he had a ton of TV experience. And he said, what you're looking for, because I was sitting in casting sessions, I honestly didn't know. I was looking for someone who was reading those particular lines that I had written in the way I imagined. And at a certain point, he had to say, no, 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 that's not what you're doing. You want a movie star. You want someone who is going to be someone that visually, even if you can't hear them, people want to spend time with. So that's how you should look at all of these actors. And I remember when Skeet came in, and Matt was looking at him through a video camera, and Matt was so impressed with the way he was able to exude soulfulness and a sense of emotion and intelligence without speaking. And he said, okay, this is very, very important. So this is a guy we should get. So that was, again, a learning experience for me, and Matt's instinct was 1,000% correct. For the character of Alva Keel, which for those of you playing along at home, you will notice is partially the name of the author of the Mothman Prophecies. John Keel's middle name is Alva, so I decided as a sort of in a nod and in tribute to him, I would name this character after him, although they really don't bear much resemblance. We needed a mysterious figure, and we wanted someone who would sort of draw Paul away from the church and bring him into this strange world of paranormal investigation. And so originally, we were thinking of guys like Donald Sutherland. Guys who you look at and okay, something's going on here. But someone who was also more in the age range of Hector Elizondo, someone who was, I'm leaving, one father and following another father figure. But we did a number of auditions, bringing in a whole range of people. And when we saw Angus, who exudes, again, without speaking, intensity, mystery, we thought, maybe the conception of this character and this group that he's joining is one of brotherhood. And so it's someone who is more of an age contemporary of Paul. And the two of them now, as brothers in a way, step into this world. And it's still a mentor figure, but it's not someone who is a generation or two beyond Paul. And Angus came in. Everyone was very impressed and excited immediately, and so we had our Alva Keel. Now, for the part of Evelyn, this was difficult to cast because, first of all, she doesn't exist in the pilot. In the pilot that you see, as in this DVD set, there's one shot of her, and in the original pilot, it was a different actress. Now, we knew that the woman who opens the door at the end of the pilot was going to be our third major cast member, but because we didn't have lines written for her and we weren't sure exactly how that character was going to work, we did not hold extensive casting for our third lead. We cast an actress who was great, but all she did was open the door and smile and say hello and come in, Paul, and that was it. Then after the pilot was picked up and we knew this was going to be a series, we knew we had a challenge ahead of us in casting this character for whom we had never written anything. Again, saw a range of people. It was very, very late. We were already filming episodes. In fact, we'd already completed, I believe, filming one of the episodes, The Ghost, and also at the same time feverishly looking for the person who would be the perfect sort of third point on the triangle. The theory in casting Marissa was we want someone, obviously, who is very watchable, and she is amazingly beautiful, but we wanted someone who was also normal and real, at least in terms of her character, so that we could see that Keel has been leading a strange life, and obviously Paul, in a way, has been leading a cloistered existence. But here's a woman who has had a real life, a bad, unsuccessful relationship that, she has a son, but she was never married to the father. The father is a peripheral figure in their lives. She was a police officer, so she's had, a lot of gritty real life experiences. And then, because of incidences that occurred in her life, she stepped away from law enforcement and has joined up with Alva Keel. And we decided that we would reveal over time how the two of them came together. And that we were, obviously hoping we would have many, many years to peel away the layers of the onion. We were lucky in casting Marissa. She brought, in many ways, a real sense of stability and almost she was almost the den mother for these two poor, kind of lost guys. She was something that provided them with a family and even a child in a way. So in a way, they were kind of the weird paranormal Brady Bunch. The vision for Miracles and the backdrop against which we wanted to tell our paranormal stories was very much one of everyday life, because that, to us, was what was interesting and what would be identifiable for the audience. And we definitely brought up Stephen King, and we brought up the fact that, and I think maybe on my third reading of Christine, I actually was waiting for the first, you have a 500-page novel. When does the first bona fide, absolutely, unquestionably supernatural event occur? And I believe it was 250 pages in. Everything before that is just getting to know these characters and building suspense. And if you mention you want to do something the way Stephen King did it, people will listen to you. And Stephen King is a huge reason that I'm doing what I'm doing. So what we wanted to do was, let's not make it a Gothic show. Let's, as in the books that I've always read, where are people when the strange things happen? I have a book that talks about a haunted apartment complex in Santa Ana, California. I love that more than anything. I would love to visit the haunted apartment complex in Santa Ana. I think in The Battle at Shadow Ridge, we reached the absolute zenith of my desires when we were able to depict the haunted gas station mini-mart. If a gas station mini-mart can be haunted, then I can go to sleep a happy man. Then I know this world is truly a special place. I don't need to go to a Scottish castle. So this is what we were trying for. This is what we wanted more than anything. And David Greenwalt got this instantly. And he and I adopted as our buzzword for the series, mundane. Now, we never told anyone this because that's not what a network wants to hear. But we did know that that's what we wanted to portray. We wanted to let people know that, hey, you could be walking down the street, you could be at a bus station, and something strange can happen. And that's, to us, that's really exciting. So we were able to pursue that vigorously. And also, it's typically not that difficult to build the set of the inside of an apartment house or get a mini-mart to use as a location, whereas a Scottish castle might be a bit more challenging. So we were allowed to follow that as far as we wanted to, and we had a great time doing it. David Greenwalt and I were not overly concerned with the whys and wherefores and the careful plotting of an overall 10-season-long mythology in which the ultimate answer, darkness or light, would be answered. That was not something that we were concerned with. I think one reason is that David had worked on a couple of shows that had dealt heavily in that, and so he had kind of felt that he had done some of that. But also, you know, you had the X-Files. Now, the X-Files did two kinds of episodes. They did their standalones, and then they did their mythology episodes, which had to do with Mulder's sister and what was going on there. Purely from an individual point of view and a viewer point of view, I enjoyed the standalones much more than, because look, the fact is, with these grand mythologies, ultimately, you don't want an answer. That's when it becomes no fun anymore. When someone finally goes, oh, look behind the curtain, there he is, that's Oz, good night, ladies and gentlemen. You want to leave the mystery. And for me, that wasn't difficult, because for me, that was the point to begin with. The point wasn't, I know how this story ends, and it ends with a conflagration between good and evil, and good triumphs and evil is vanquished. Because number one, I don't believe that. But number two, for me, that's not really playing fair. That is an ending that I personally believe most of us aren't going to be around for. And if the ending to humanity does come, I kind of believe it's going to come from, you know, a meteor, kind of like the kind that wiped out the dinosaurs, as we've been told. I think we bring meaning to these events, and that's what the standalone episodes of Miracles were all about. We wanted to thread through some stuff because those are Paul's concerns also. Because ultimately, we want the answer to the big story because we want the answer to our big story. That's the one I'm interested in. Where am I going to be the second after I die? Am I going to not exist at all and therefore not have to deal with the question? Or am I going to suddenly find myself in a dull motel room somewhere in an alternate dimension where I find that this was my 650th time through and I'm headed for 651 and this is just this long, unimaginably long ongoing process, which for me, I really hope. That's what I want. I want the dull motel room. But I want the dull motel room. I don't want the harps in the clouds. I want someone going, okay, now on to the third grade. You know, start studying. You're going down next, and you're going to play the role of, you know, well, hopefully one of Tom Cruise's kids. There was a modest plan in place for where the show would go had it been an enormous success. The first thing that would have happened is that David Greenwald and I would have become even more unbearable. We were really looking forward to that. But in terms of the show itself, what we were looking at was more closed-ended stories. We wanted to further explore the character of Al Vakil, what his background exactly was, and how he got to the place where he began our series. We had various episode ideas that were very much in the vein of the 13 that are on this DVD collection, but we really didn't see any further than that. We wanted to keep in play the question of, is Paul ultimately destined for good or evil? How much control does he have over that destiny, and where will it ultimately take him? Because for us, that was an interior story. That was just him questioning himself in the way that many of us question ourselves. Did I do the right thing just now in what I just did? And when the story of my life is written, will that be seen as, you know, the smartest thing I ever did, or unbelievably stupid? And because the show was from Paul's point of view, we wanted to keep him in a place of questioning in terms of his own destiny. Those were our plans. Sketchy, yes, but we knew we had plenty of time because we knew that we had at least 10 seasons to work all these things out. I love all 13 episodes. You know, I mean, this was a great experience. There's not one of them that I thought, boy, we really missed the mark here. I love them all. I mean, in a way, maybe that's the blessing. We did 13. I'm proud of all of them. There's no moment, you know, somewhere in the middle of the third season where, you know, we have a motorcycle race. What I would like to point out are certain themes. Themes you'll find in, for instance, the episode The Ghost and The Letter, which were actually conceived very close together, but that I think illustrate something that interested both David Greenwald and I. And those are episodes about people who have achieved some sort of across the threshold relationship with someone that they have lost. In The Ghost, it was a man achieving what he believed was contact with his dead son. And in the letter, it was a young woman believing she had established contact with a father she never knew. And in both of these episodes, the upshot was, don't sacrifice the real terrestrial relationship for the more numinous, possibly real, possibly unreal spiritual relationship. And in both episodes, I mean, especially in the letter, there's just this wonderful moment where our character believes she has established contact with a father she never knew. She believes she's getting channeled handwritten letters from him. And she's delighted. She's like, this is great. And she says this wonderful line. This was an episode written by Zach Estrin and Chris Levinson, and I just love this. The line is something like, she's almost in this mania, and she says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write him letters too, but I can't mail them. So I'm just going to write letters and ask him questions, and then I'm going to put those letters in a drawer, and then I'm going to see if he answers them when I get letters in the mail from this unknown source that apparently is her father. And it was just, I thought, such a beautiful moment, because it's someone who has finally got all the questions of heaven and earth answered to her satisfaction, and things are going to be great now. And of course, everything falls apart immediately at that point. And that is a very central theme, which is the sort of the siren song of the ghost. And that was something we found very interesting. I must say that St. Debbie was a favorite of mine, not a favorite of, I believe, anyone but me. It's the only episode that does not actually have bona fide psychic phenomena taking place. The miracle is kind of an everyday miracle. But I love that episode because it allows us to reveal something of Alva Keel's character, some of his sadness and loneliness. There was something in that episode that we never quite got across, but I thought was perfect in describing Keel's character. We see him at the beginning of the episode waking up in the morning, and he's sleeping on a couch, and he looks like he's just had a horrible night, and he's just woken up from a nightmare, and he washes his face, and then he gets ready to begin his business day. And the idea was that we would literally follow him as he walks toward camera through the door of his apartment, and then immediately down the stairs of that weird little room that is at the top of the set of SQ, and suddenly reveal, oh my God, he lives in this bizarre, drab, shadow-laden office. This really is his life. He has nothing else. And unless he's investing in a case, he probably never leaves this place. And I thought there was something really just haunting and beautiful and sad about that. So that one meant a lot to me. I believe that Mother's Daughter is possibly our most beautiful episode outside of the pilot, and also touches on a number of themes I was very interested in. And Christian Taylor did an amazingly beautiful poetic job of expressing the story of two souls living in one body. And I never get tired of watching that episode. Ultimately, Battle at Shadow Ridge, which is perhaps our goofiest episode, and it's in a weird way the one that reminds me of like one of those great Star Trek episodes where they go to the planet that's all about the Old West or something. I mean, the thing I say about in a nice way about Battle at Shadow Ridge, it feels like a rerun the first time you see it. It's like, wow, what was going on here? What were they thinking? And yet, to me, the ideas in that episode are among the most fascinating. And it literally just came from, I read something cool in a book, now somebody handed me a TV show, we got to do this episode. And so much of the feeling of doing miracles was like that. It was, well, I can't believe that that anyone is interested in this. The network especially is going to allow a show that is really a philosophical rumination on the nature of reality. That's going to be allowed to just kind of go ahead. And for the most part, it really was. I believe in a lot of ways the Miracles experience was blessed. It was very lucky. I mean, first of all, when I say blessed, and I'm not talking in the religious sense, I'm talking in the sense that I feel personally very blessed, that it was blessed, first of all, by a harmony of people. I mean, you need to realize from the very beginning, from the outset, people were agreeing on things. Again, that first meeting with Megan Walpert and Suzanne Patmore and Josh Berry, there was a sense in that room of, yeah, we're really creating something here. This could be really interesting. This could be fun. And everyone, was kind of along for that ride. For all the controversy, we kind of moved through the steps. I was a novice at television, and suddenly a year later, a year after that meeting, I was very close to, well, just after a year, I had a show on the air. That's unheard of, so that was very lucky. And again, with beginner's luck, you think that, well, that's the way it's always going to be, and certainly will be from here on out. And this very experience, in a way, is examined in Friendly Skies, because there was so much going on, and so much of a feeling of a nexus of luck and talent and all these things sort of coming together, that I thought, wow, this is great, and this is what I am going to feel like for the next 10 years while we do this show. It's going to be me expressing myself every day, feeling creative and doing this great stuff, and you feel that way for a while. And then it begins to change, and suddenly there are complaints, and there are people who have a different idea, and it was very subtle, and it wasn't a huge thing. These were not giant screaming fights, but pretty soon you realize, oh yeah, this is just life. And there are going to be, you're not going to get all the, particular guest stars you want, and certain things aren't going to happen, and shows are going to run in the wrong order, and suddenly you're going to have to face the music. Suddenly ratings are going to come in, and there's going to be test audiences, and there's going to be all kinds of things, and reshoots. And again, from the novice point of view, I thought, I have been handed the keys to the candy store. And to a huge degree, I had. But it made it that much more unsettling when reality crept in. I must say that once the show went on the air, and unfortunately, while it did well, it did not do exactly what people were hoping it would do. To a large degree, a pall had fallen over me. Again, not to make a pun about the star's character name, but a feeling of this can't last. Nothing that has been this much fun can be allowed to go on very long. And that definitely, of course, is when the tide turned. And you ask, can people create miracles? Well, okay, I can speak to this. When the show was on, though it did not reach a wide audience, it reached a very intense group of people who passionately loved the show. And those people are the reason that these DVDs that you're watching even exist. These people literally began making Save Miracles t-shirts. A woman named Heather LaFlame actually designed these t-shirts and began selling them to raise money to then run an ad that would be about saving miracles. Will some other network come and rescue this show? Because very early on, because of ratings and because of numerous problems in scheduling, and the show didn't run every week for a bunch of reasons, it became clear that, ABC was having some tough times in those days, and this was not going to turn the tide. And so the people who did love the show did everything they could to get the show picked up by another network, to, in any way they could, extend the life of Miracles. And so literally, the week we were canceled, I got like 500 emails from fans going, we love this show, and this show changed my life, and it meant a lot to me. And I remember thinking, well, okay, so the worst weekend of my life, in a weird way, is now one of the best, because you did reach some people. Some people were out there who completely got the show. In their emails, it's like I would bring them to the office. Look at this. Look, they liked it. They got it. Remember that thing we did? They saw it in this particular scene, in this episode. They loved it. And for the people who worked on the show, who were devastated when we got canceled. Because for a lot of people, this was not just another job. And again, I didn't know this. I figured everyone loved everything they did. Everyone was passionately behind every show they ever worked on. And I remember that people walked up and just said, I'm so glad I'm working on a show that I can be proud of, and that is really dealing with something different and interesting. And it was very gratifying to me. And as much as I could, I tried to let people know, look, I'm getting some response here, just in my email account. You should check this out. And then Chris Misrini, my assistant, who became sort of the, in-office spearhead of the Save Miracles campaign, I mean, just took it upon herself to do anything she could. Book radio interviews, book live on-air interviews, do anything she could to publicize the show, and then later coordinate with fans to somehow breathe life into this thing, because none of us wanted to see it end. And ultimately, it ended. And now it has new life here. And just when you think something is completely over and will never come back, you get a phone call, and it's coming back. So that's a nice new chapter in the life of Miracles.